It was Thursday, January 23rd, 2020. The scene that greeted Portuguese police in Lisbon was unsettling. The call had come in, reporting a body found in a garage in one of the city's quieter neighborhoods. What they discovered in that garage would set off a chain of events that would unravel a multi-billion-dollar empire. The man was Nuno Ribeiro Duna, a 45-year-old banker who worked for a Portuguese bank with connections to the powerful. His death appeared to be a suicide at first glance. No signs of struggle, no foul play. But the question remained, why would a man in his prime, an influential figure, take his own life? The answer wasn't as simple as it seemed. Just days before his untimely death, a bombshell report had been published by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. The article was damning, detailing how Isabel dos Santos, the daughter of former Angolan president José Eduardo dos Santos, had used her father's power and influence to carve out a personal fortune of over $2 billion, money amassed at the expense of a war-torn, impoverished nation. The International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, ICIJ, Luanda Leaks, was based on the leak of 715,000 confidential documents, and this document would prove to be the key to unraveling the secret world of Angola's richest woman. Among those files was the name Nuno Ribeiro Duna, and it wasn't just a name on the page. He had a significant role in Dos Santos' financial dealings, particularly at Eurobic, a bank linked to her empire. The question now was, what had Duna known? And why had his death come just days after the publication of the Luanda Leaks? As the investigation began to take shape, it became clear that the stakes were far higher than anyone had anticipated. Isabel dos Santos had built her empire brick by brick, and as the world learned the full extent of her dealings, her carefully constructed facade would start to crumble. The story of Isabel dos Santos doesn't begin in a boardroom or a luxury mansion. Her rise was fueled by the political instability and corruption that gripped Angola in the aftermath of its independence. In November 1975, Angola gained independence from Portugal. But what followed was far from the peaceful transition many hoped for. Instead, the country was plunged into a brutal civil war that would last for decades. Amid the chaos, a man named Antonio Agostinho Neto emerged as Angola's first president. His government quickly clashed with opposition groups, particularly over the control of Angola's vast oil reserves. It was a perfect storm for foreign powers to get involved. The Cold War was at its height, and both the United States and the Soviet Union saw Angola's oil-rich soil as strategic prize. The war ravaged the nation. By the mid-1970s, Angola's oil production had drastically dwindled, and the country faced a severe financial crisis. But the government, led by Neto and later his successor, José Eduardo dos Santos, wasn't about to let go of Angola's resources. The government created the state-run company Sango, which would become the cornerstone of its financial power. Sango guaranteed the state 51% of the country's oil production, allowing Angola to negotiate lucrative deals with international oil companies. This was more than just a matter of economic survival for Angola. It became a mechanism to strengthen political controls and enrich those in power. Behind the scenes, deals were made that would lead to vast personal fortunes, and at the center of it all was Isabel dos Santos, a young woman who was about to benefit greatly from her father's rule. Her rise was swift. After finishing her studies in London, Isabel was appointed to manage a government's sanitation project in Luanda, Angola's capital. It was here that she began her foray into business. A seemingly small partnership with the local restaurant owner opened the door to much bigger opportunities. This was the beginning of what would become an empire built on corruption, nepotism, and unchecked power. Isabel dos Santos' journey from a small-time businesswoman to the richest woman in Africa was marked by a series of strategic moves. Moves that were often made with the full backing of her father's presidency. One of the first major ventures involved Angola's diamond industry, a sector that would become a linchpin in her vast financial empire. Angola is one of the largest diamond producers in the world, and it wasn't long before Eduardo dos Santos, Isabel's father, sought to take control of the country's diamond industry. By 1999, he pushed for the creation of a new partnership that would grant Angola's state-owned diamond company, Ndiama, joint control with a foreign partner. This was where Isabel dos Santos came in, through a Gibraltar-based investment company, Trans-Africa Investment Services. With this company, Isabel secured a 24.5% stake in a new joint venture, which became one of the most profitable deals of her career. Her business acumen, however, didn't stop there. As Angola's oil sector was booming, Isabel and her father set their sight on telecommunications. In the late 1990s, Isabel's father issued a decree that allowed the government to bypass a public bidding process for telecom licenses, instead granting the rights to those willing to enter joint ventures with the states. Isabel's company, Unitel, was granted the first private telecom license in Angola, with a 25% stake held by the government oil company Sonangol. This license would later become one of Angola's most valuable assets, and it was through Unitel that Isabel expanded her wealth into the telecom sector, making billions from the country's mobile phone markets. The Dos Santos family didn't stop with diamonds and telecom. With this sector secured, Isabel's portfolio expanded into banking, real estate, and energy. In partnership with Portuguese billionaire Americo Amorim, Isabel entered the banking sector, acquiring Banco Internacional de Crédito (BIC). Through strategic loans and favorable government deals, Isabel and her partners were able to amass significant shares in the bank, while her family's political influence ensured the success of the venture. At the same time, Isabel's holding in Angola's energy sector continued to grow. Her investments, particularly in Sonangol and other state-owned companies, turned her into one of the most powerful figures in Angola's corporate world. By her late 30s, Isabel had already become a major player in global business circles, owning luxury properties in Lisbon and London, and accumulating wealth at a pace few could rival. As her empire expanded, Isabel's strategic use of offshore companies became a hallmark of her business practices. To protect her wealth and avoid scrutiny, she and her team set up multiple shell companies in tax havens like Malta, Mauritius, and the British Virgin Islands. These companies allowed her to move money across borders with ease, hiding her true wealth from the prying eyes of authorities. In 2015, documents from her legal team outline how these offshore companies will enable her avoid paying withholding taxes while collecting dividends, interest, and royalties from her various business interests. By 2013, Isabel was recognized by Forbes as the youngest billionaire in Africa and the only woman on the continent to make the list. She controlled over 400 companies and subsidiaries across 41 countries, including in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Europe. Her success was a testament to the power of nepotism, political connections, and a ruthless pursuit of wealth. However, like many empires built on corruption, Isabel dos Santos' vast fortune was not destined to last forever. Her carefully crafted world of wealth and influence began to unravel when her father, Jose Eduardo dos Santos stepped down as president of Angola in 2017 after 38 years in power. While his departure marked the end for an era for Angola, it also signaled the beginning of Isabel's downfall. Upon assuming office, the new president, João Lourenço, began making moves to reform the country's financial systems and tackle the rampant corruption that had plagued Angola for decades. One of his first acts as president was to remove Isabel from her position as head of the country's state-owned oil company, Sonangol, which had become a crucial part of her family wealth. Lourenço's government began investigating Isabel and other members of the Dos Santos family for possible corruption, focusing on the vast amount of state money that has been misappropriated during her father's rule. The fallout was swift and dramatic. On December 30, 2019, the Luanda Provincial Court ordered the seizure of Isabel dos Santos' personal bank accounts, along with those of her husband, Sindica Dokolo, and their business partner, Mario Felipe Morare do Silva. The court also froze her stake in various Angolan companies, including Unitel, the telecom company she had built into a multi-billion-dollar empire. As investigations intensified, the Angolan government announced that it was preparing a legal battle to confiscate Dos Santos' assets in Portugal. The country's judicial system had finally started to hold her accountable for the damage caused by her corrupt practices, with Interpol issuing a red notice for Isabel's arrest. The woman, once hailed as Africa's richest and most powerful businesswoman, became a fugitive. The US State Department barred her and her immediate family from entering the country, citing significant corruption tied to the misappropriation of public funds for personal gains. In December 2023, the Angolan High Court found Isabel guilty of using fraudulent offshore companies and shell corporations to divert state funds into her personal bank accounts, ordering the seizure of nearly $700 million worth of her assets. Yet, despite mounting legal battles, Isabel remained defiant, continuing to state innocence and even hinting at a possible future presidential run. Her legal fight intensified in 2020 when she lost a battle in London's High Court to prevent the freezing of millions in assets. Despite the revelations and growing pressure, Isabel dos Santos' story is not over. As the legal and financial battles continue, the world watches to see whether she will face the consequences of her actions or manage to escape justice once again.